The sky was gray, and the air was cold. The wind moved slowly across the dusty ground of the alien planet called Triversex. In the middle of a broken road stood a small alien girl. Her arms wrapped tightly around her thin body. Her name was Silly, and she had just been left behind. Her stepmother didn't even look back. She climbed into the transport shuttle, closed the door, and flew away. Silly stood still, her big green eyes staring into the sky where the shuttle disappeared. One hand held a broken toy, and the other clutched a small bag that barely had anything inside. People walked past her without stopping. Some looked at her with disgust. Others just ignored her like she didn't exist. She heard them whisper, "That's the slow one." And her mother gave up. No surprise. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just stood there, frozen, like a statue made of sadness. Hours passed, and the sun went down. The ground became colder, and the wind stronger. Silly walked slowly through the edge of town, her feet bare and bleeding. She finally found a broken metal roof near a junkyard and crawled under it. She didn't eat that day, and she didn't drink water. Her stomach growled loudly, but there was nothing she could do. Her small hands shook as she hugged her legs and rested her head on her knees. Tears rolled down her face quietly, but she didn't make a sound. Night came fast, and the stars looked sharp in the sky, far in the distance. She saw a soft blue light flashing slowly. It was a human ship in common in this part of the planet. Humans didn't stay here for long. Most only came for supply runs or crash landings. The ship landed roughly nearby, its engine coughing smoke. The pilot inside cursed softly as he checked his damaged system. His name was Eli, a human supply runner who had taken a shortcut and paid the price. The ship's main engine was burned out. He needed to stay grounded for at least a night. Eli stepped out, wearing a thick jacket and boots. He looked around for dry land and noticed the junkyard as he walked toward it. His flashlight flickered, then caught something small under a metal sheet. It moved, then froze again. "Hey," Eli said gently, lowering the light. "You okay?" No answer. He took a step closer, then stopped, not wanting to scare whoever it was. The small shape moved again, curling tighter. He could now see was a little alien girl. Dirty, shaking, and alone, Eli reached into his pack and took out a small hot meal bar. He placed it carefully on the ground and stepped back. "Not gonna hurt you," he said softly. "You look hungry." Silly didn't trust him at first, but the smell of the warm food reached her nose, and her eyes widened. She crawled out slowly, like a wild animal that had been kicked too many times. Her hands reached for the meal, and she grabbed it fast. Stuffing it into her mouth, she ate fast, too fast, choking once, but not stopping. Eli watched quietly, not judging, not asking questions. When she finished, she stared at him. Unsure of what would happen next, Eli pulled off his jacket and placed it over her shoulders. "You'll freeze out here," he said. "Come with me. My ship's warmer." Silly's heart beat fast. Nobody had ever said that to her. Not her stepmother. Not anyone. She looked at him, scared but hopeful. He smiled gently, like a friend. Not like those who had judged her before. After a long pause, she stood up and followed him, barefoot, silent, and unsure. Inside the ship, the warmth hit her like sunlight. The air was clean, the floor smooth, and the light soft. Eli handed her a water bottle, and she drank like she hadn't tasted water in days. He didn't ask her name until she was wrapped in a blanket, sitting beside a small heater. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then whispered, "Silly." It was the first time she had said her name out loud since being abandoned. Eli nodded. "Nice to meet you, Silly," he said. "I'm Eli." She didn't smile, not yet, but her eyes looked less afraid. She leaned back against the soft wall and closed her eyes. For the first time in days, she felt something strange. It wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. Sit was safety. As she drifted to sleep, Eli whispered quietly, "You're not alone anymore." Silly's fingers clutched the edge of his coat, holding on like it was life itself, and outside, the cold wind howled through the junkyard, but inside that tiny human ship, a broken little heart had started to heal. The morning came with soft light filtering through the small window of Eli's ship. Inside, the air was warm and quiet, filled with the low hum of sleeping machines. Silly slowly opened her eyes, unsure if the night before had been real or just a dream. She looked around carefully. The blanket still wrapped around her small shoulders. The soft heater hummed beside her, and the jacket she held still smelled like smoke and safety. She turned her head and saw the human eel listening by a control panel. Sipping something from a tin cup, he didn't look at her right away, didn't speak fast or scare her. Instead, he gave her space, letting her sit in peace until she was ready. Her stomach growled again, louder this time. Eli smiled without turning around. "I heard that," he said gently. Then he stood up and pulled out something from a small storage drawer, a fresh, steaming food pack. He placed it on the table near her, then stepped back, hands raised like before. "No tricks, no force," he said. "Only if you want it." Silly looked at the food, then at him. This time, she didn't grab it like a wild animal. She moved slower, more carefully, her eyes always watching his. She sat on the floor near the table and began to eat, slowly and quietly. Her hands still trembled, but her chewing was calmer, more controlled. Eli didn't speak, didn't ask anything. He just sat on a chair and watched her from a respectful distance. After the first few bites, Silly looked up, her voice soft and unsure. "Why? Give me food," she asked. Eli leaned back, surprised she spoke at all. "Because you looked hungry," he replied, and scared. She didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever cared if she was hungry. Not her stepmother, not the neighbors, not even the schoolkeepers. She looked down again, finishing the last bite with careful fingers. Then she spoke again, voice even softer. No one ever gave before. Eli didn't smile, but his eyes became softer. "Well," he said, "that should have changed long ago." He walked over slowly and crouched down beside her. "Where are your parents?" he asked, not in a demanding way, but like a friend asking a gentle question. Silly didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "Real mother." "Gone, stepmother." Said, "I'm broken." Eli's heart ached hearing those words. He nodded slowly. "You're not broken," he said. "You're strong." Silly's lips pressed tight, her eyes filled with water, but she didn't let the tears fall. She had trained herself never to cry in front of others, not even when she was hit or pushed or called names. "Do you want to stay here a while?" Eli asked. Silly looked up, confused. "You don't want me to go?" Eli shook his head. "I want you to be safe for a long moment." She said nothing. Then she nodded, just once, and pulled the blanket closer around herself. That nod was small, but it meant everything. She didn't have to say thank you. Not yet, but Eli understood. He handed her a small data tablet, not too advanced. Just one with simple pictures and games. "Wanna play?" he asked. Silly looked at it, eyes wide, then slowly took it in her hands. She pressed a few buttons and watched colorful stars dance on the screen. A soft giggle escaped her lips, quick and quiet. Eli smiled as he stood up. "I'll get started on fixing the engine," he said. "Yell if you need me," as he stepped outside the ship. The wind hit his face again, dry and cold, but he felt warmer now, knowing that someone inside that metal shell had begun to heal. Back inside, Silly played quietly, but her mind was spinning. Why would a stranger feed her, clothe her, protect her, and not ask for anything in return? Was it a trick? Would he change later? Or was he really different? Her finger stopped on the screen, and she turned to look at the empty doorway. She stood up and peeked outside. Eli was under the ship, fixing a loose part with sparks flying from his tools. He noticed her shadow and looked up. "All good?" Silly nodded, then walked toward him slowly, still wrapped in the big coat. "I can help," she said quietly. Eli blinked in surprise. "You sure?" She nodded again. "I know some parts. I watched workers before." He smiled and passed her a small tool. "Then you're my assistant." Silly sat beside him, watching carefully, holding the wires steady when he asked. Her hands were small, but steady, and her mind sharp, even if no one had ever noticed before. They worked in silence, but it wasn't empty. It was full of quiet respect, of tiny steps toward something new. That day, they didn't talk much, but something important happened. A bridge formed between kindness and trust, between fear and safety. And that night, when Silly curled up on the floor again with the blanket around her, she looked at Eli and whispered something she had never said to anyone. "Good night," she said. Eli looked back and replied, "Good night, Silly," for her. Those words weren't small. They were the start of something bigger, something she had never dreamed she'd have a real chance to be loved. The wind outside blew stronger the next morning, but inside Eli's ship, it was warm and calm. Silly woke up early, already sitting near the tools, waiting. She hadn't said much, but her eyes followed every movement Eli made. She liked the way he worked, not with anger or shouting, but with quiet focus and care. Eli rubbed his neck and yawned. "You're up early." Silly gave a shy nod. "I want to help again," she said. He smiled and tossed her a soft cloth. "Then let's get started. Assistant, all day." They worked together under the belly of the ship. Eli explained how each part connected, using simple words. Silly watched and remembered, repeating his words under her breath. She learned fast, surprising even herself. When a power cable slipped, Eli reached to grab it but stopped. Silly had already caught it, holding it steady with both hands. "You've got quick hands," he said with a proud look. Silly blinked, surprised. "No one ever said that before. Maybe they weren't looking properly," Eli replied. She smiled, not a big smile, just a small, soft one, but for her, it felt like the sun. Later, Eli gave her a simple data pad and said, "Here, if you want to draw or write anything." Silly took it carefully and looked at the blank screen. For a moment, her fingers hesitated. Then she drew a little stick figure, holding a tool beside a ship. She looked at it, then added a second figure smaller with a blanket. She showed it to Eli, who laughed gently. "That's me and you." She nodded. "You fix the ship. I learn. You do more than learn," he said. "You help." The day passed like that. Wires, bolts, laughter, and quiet teamwork. But as the sun set, something outside changed to shadowy figures. Appeared near the edge of the junkyard, whispering to each other. Eli noticed them through the window and narrowed his eyes. He stepped outside with a flashlight and called out, "Can I help you?" One of the aliens stepped forward, tall and thin, with pale green skin. "You have the child," the alien said coldly. Eli stood firm. She was abandoned, starving, and alone. She was left for a reason. The alien replied, "She's cursed." Silly, listening from inside, froze. That word, adjunct, cursed. She wrapped the blanket tighter around herself. Shaking, she thought she had escaped those voices. But they found her again. Eli didn't move. "She's a child," he said, sharply. "And she's under my care now." The alien's face twisted. "That's a mistake, human." They turned and left, but Eli knew this wouldn't be the last time. When he walked back in, he saw Silly sitting silently in the corner. Her eyes were wide, her hands clutching the drawing tablet tightly. "They want to take me back," she whispered. "No," Eli said firmly, kneeling beside her. "They don't get to decide your worth. but they always said I was broken. She said, not smart, not strong, not normal. You're none of those things. Eli replied, you're brave, you're kind, and you're learning faster than anyone I've seen. Silly looked at him, unsure. Eli took a deep breath, then said slowly, you don't have to prove anything to anyone, Silly, not even to me. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time she didn't hide them. Will you leave me? She asked, voice cracking. Eli shook his head. Never. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small silver ring on a chain. This was my sister's, he said. She was smart and strong, just like you. He placed the necklace gently around Celi's neck. Now it's yours, he said. I promise you are not alone. Not anymore. She touched the ring gently, then looked up. I'll take care of it, she whispered. I know you will. Eli said, smiling. That night, she didn't sleep on the floor. Eli set up a small bedroll beside the heater, just for her, with a pillow, a proper blanket, and even a soft light that changed colors slowly. Silly curled up, holding the drawing pad in one hand and the necklace in the other, before sleep took her. She whispered, Eli. He looked up from his corner where he sat fixing another circuit. Yes? I want to stay here, not just for one night, she said. I want to stay forever. Eli didn't answer right away. He stood, walked over, and knelt beside her. As long as you want, he said. This is your home now, and in the quiet hum of that small ship, a new promise was made, not with big words or legal papers, but with food, warmth, kindness, and the steady beat of two hearts learning how to heal. Together, the next few days passed quietly. Eli and Silly spent their time inside the ship, repairing wires, testing systems, and cooking simple meals together. Silly laughed more often now, her smile growing a little wider each day. She had even drawn a picture of the ship and titled it Home. Outside, the wind had started to calm. Eli hoped they'd be able to fly soon. Maybe head back to Earth or a safer colony, but something deep inside him told him to be careful. Not because of the ship, because of the people outside. On the fourth evening, just as Silly was helping Eli clean the tools, the ship's alarm beeped. Someone was approaching. Eli looked at the screen and frowned. A name appeared, Nara Vex, registered as Silly's stepmother. Silly froze, dropping the cloth in her hand. That's her, she whispered, her voice shaking. That's the one who left me. Eli stood slowly. You don't have to see her, he said gently. Stay inside. He opened the main hatch and stepped out into the cold air. Standing outside was a tall alien woman with sharp eyes and shiny red skin. She wore fancy clothes and fake sadness on her face. Oh, thank the stars, she said loudly. You found my child. She must have been so scared. Eli crossed his arms. She wasn't scared when you left her in the dust. Nara blinked, then sighed. It was a mistake, she said. Families fight. She ran off. I was looking everywhere, from the door. Silly peeked out and whispered, Liar. Eli didn't move. She doesn't want to go with you. Nara's eyes narrowed. She's my blood, she hissed. You're just a human. I'm a human who fed her, warmed her, and listened when she cried. Eli replied, What did you do? Nara's fake tears vanished. You can't keep her. That's illegal. I've already contacted Planetary Protection, Eli said. And I have footage of everything, her condition, her words, your abandonment. The woman's eyes burned with rage, but she didn't attack. Instead, she spat on the ground and walked away, shouting over her shoulder, This isn't over, outsider. The hatch closed behind Eli with a soft hiss. Silly ran to him and hugged his leg, tears falling from her eyes. I don't want to go back, she cried. Please don't let her. Take me, Eli knelt and hugged her tightly. I won't, I promise. That night, Silly didn't sleep. Every sound made her flinch. Every shadow made her sit up. Eli stayed nearby. Working on the ship while keeping an eye on her, he didn't push her to talk. He just stayed present. And that meant everything, but the next morning, things got worse. Eli stepped out to get supplies, only to find the side of his ship marked with red paint. Words in the local language that meant curse child and leave now. He wiped it off with a cloth, jaw tight, heart burning. They didn't know, Silly not really. They only believed stories, old fears, and lies spread by her own stepmother. Back inside, Silly was sitting silently. Holding the drawing tablet to her chest, she saw the red on Eli's gloves and knew something had happened. I saw the words, she said quietly. They always said I was bad luck. Eli shook his head. They're wrong, he said. You're not cursed, Silly. You're strong, but why do they hate me? She asked. Eli sat down beside her, thinking. Because people fear what they don't understand, he said. They choose hate when they should choose kindness. Silly looked at her small hands, then whispered, I don't want to be feared. Eli gently lifted her chin. Then don't be, he said. Be brave, be kind. And don't let their lies change who you are. Later that day, someone knocked on the ship's outer panel hard. Eli checked the monitor and saw 2 local enforcers, with a woman standing behind them. It was Nara again, now with fake tears and a story ready. Eli opened the hatch only halfway. One of the enforcers stepped forward. We received a report of child abduction. She's no prisoner, Eli said calmly. She's the one who was left to starve, and I have the proof. He handed over a data chip security footage, audio logs, and Silly's own voice telling the truth. The enforcers watched it right there on a small scanner, their faces turning serious. Nara's lies started to crumble under the weight of truth. The female enforcer looked at Nara and asked sharply, Did you abandon this child? Nara stuttered, tried to deny it, then growled, She's useless anyway. That was enough. The enforcers placed cuffs on Nara's wrists and led her away. She screamed and kicked, shouting that Silly would never belong anywhere. But Silly stood in the doorway of the ship, watching silently for the first time. She saw the one who hurt her being taken away, not praised, not listened to, but stopped. Eli walked back to her side and placed a hand on her shoulder. It's over, he said. Really? She whispered. He nodded. She won't hurt you again. Silly didn't say anything right away. Then she turned and hugged him tightly, holding on like he was the last piece of safety left in the galaxy, and for the first time since she was born. Silly believed that maybe, just maybe she was finally free. The ship was quiet again, but this time it wasn't fear that filled the silence. It was peace, soft and fragile like a flower after a storm. Silly sat near the window, her small hands pressed against the glass. She watched the enforcer's vehicle disappear into the sky, carrying her stepmother far away. Eli worked behind her, sealing the final circuits in the engine panel. He turned the last bolt and smiled to himself. Repairs complete, he said, wiping grease from his hands. Silly looked back at him with wide eyes. Does that mean we can leave? Eli nodded. Yes, he said. We're flying out of here. She stood slowly, the blanket still around her shoulders. Her heart beat faster. Not from fear, but from something new. Hope. The engines rumbled to life with a deep hum. The lights inside the ship turned soft blue, and the floor vibrated gently. Silly grabbed the edge of the table, eyes shining. This is real, she whispered. We're really going. Eli looked at her and smiled. You ready, kid? Silly nodded quickly. Yes, please, as the ship lifted off the ground. Dust swirled around it like smoke. The junkyard below grew smaller. the shadows fading with distance. Silly leaned into the glass, watching as the town disappeared. The place where no one had cared for her was finally behind her. Gone. Once they were in orbit, Eli turned off autopilot and leaned back. "Next stop Earth," he said. Seely turned to him, confused. "Earth?" He nodded. "My home, and maybe yours too." Silly had never been off her planet, never seen stars this close. She ran to the cockpit window and stared. So many lights, blinking and spinning. "Are we flying through them?" she asked. Eli chuckled. "More like around them. But yes, kind of." She pressed her forehead to the glass, her voice soft. "They look like dreams." Eli didn't say anything, but he watched her with warm eyes. He saw something in her now. Light that had once been hidden under fear and dirt. And now it was growing. Later, they sat together sharing dried fruit and protein chips. Silly chewed slowly, her legs swinging under the bench. "I've never been on a ship before," she said. "Not one that flew." "You're doing great," Eli replied, handing her more juice. "Do you think I'll like Earth?" she asked. "I think Earth will love you," he said. Silly tilted her head. "But I don't look like you," Eli smiled. "That doesn't matter. Not where we're going." She thought about that, then asked, "Will I go to school?" Eli nodded. "If you want to, will they laugh at me?" she asked quietly. "Some might," he admitted, "but others will become your friends." She stared down at her juice box, then said, "I'd like to try after the meal." Eli showed her a box of clothes he had packed from his last supply stop. Inside were simple outfits, soft and warm. Silly's eyes lit up as she touched a blue hoodie with a silver star on it. "Can I wear this?" she asked. Eli grinned. "It's yours." She changed behind a curtain, and when she stepped out, Eli's breath caught for a second. The small, scared girl from the junkyard was gone. Now stood a tiny explorer in clean clothes and hopeful eyes. "You look amazing," he said. She blushed and looked down. "Thank you." A little while later, the ship entered a slower cruise mode. Eli activated the learning panel on the wall, showing Silly how to draw constellations. She giggled as she connected stars with glowing lines. "This one looks like a big cat," she said. "Let's call it the Guardian," Eli replied, "because it watches over the small stars." Silly smiled wide. "Then I'm the small star." That night, she laid in the sleeping pod Eli had made for her. It was soft and warm, with glowing stars above that changed colors. She held her drawing tablet and whispered, "Eli." He looked over from his pilot seat. "Yes? Is this what home feels like?" she asked. Eli didn't answer right away. He walked over, knelt beside her, and said, "Yes, Silly, it is." She blinked slowly, then whispered, "I'm not scared anymore." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And you never have." To be. As she drifted off to sleep, the ship floated gently through space. Silent, calm, peaceful. It carried with it to souls one who had lost everything, and one who had nothing to lose. And now, together, they were building something new. Not just a journey, not just a rescue, but the beginning of a family. Asterisk, when the ship finally entered Earth's orbit. Silly gasped. She pressed both hands and her forehead to the glass, blue and green covered. The planet like a living painting. White clouds spun like soft cotton over oceans and mountains. "It's so bright," she whispered, "and alive." Eli smiled as he guided the ship toward the landing zone. "Welcome to my home," he said. "Let's make it yours too." They landed near a small human town surrounded by trees, hills, and quiet roads. Birds chirped in the air, and the wind smelled like flowers and fresh rain. Silly stepped outside slowly, unsure if the ground was real. She bent down, touched the grass, and laughed. "It's soft," she said. "It doesn't hurt my feet." Eli handed her a backpack with her name stitched on it. "Come on," he said. "There's someone I want you to meet." They walked to a small white house with a red roof and a garden full of yellow flowers. A kind-looking old woman opened the door, her eyes wide with surprise. "Eli," she said warmly, "and who is this bright little star?" Silly stood behind Eli, nervous. He put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "This is Silly," he said. "She's staying with me." The woman smiled. "Well then, Silly." "I'm Aunt May," she said, "and I've been waiting a long time to meet you." Inside the house, the smell of fresh bread filled the air. Silly sat at the table while Aunt May placed a plate in front of her. There was soup, fruit, and warm slices of bread with sweet butter. Silly looked at the food, then at the two adults. "No one's watching you, child," Aunt May said kindly. "Just eat. You're safe here." Silly took a bite, then another, then another. Her eyes watered, but this time, it wasn't from sadness. It was the taste of kindness after the meal. Aunt May gave Silly a small wrapped box. Silly opened it carefully and found colored pencils and a thick sketchbook. "I hear you like drawing," she said. Silly smiled, nodding fast, "Thank you." That night, Eli and Silly stayed in a small guest room. There were 2 beds, but Silly quietly dragged her blanket next to Eli's. "Is it okay?" she asked. Eli nodded. "Of course," he said. "Wherever you feel safe." She laid her sketchbook beside her pillow and whispered, "Today was nice." "It was," Eli agreed. "You did great." The next morning, they went into town. People stared, but no one laughed or said cruel things. A few smiled, a few waved, and one woman even offered Silly a flower. She took it slowly, unsure, then held it to her chest. "She didn't call me cursed," she said softly. "No," Eli replied. "She called you beautiful without saying a word." Later, they visited a small school. The teacher greeted Eli kindly and looked down at Silly with warm eyes. "Would you like to join our class?" she asked. Silly looked at Eli for approval. "You can try for 1 day," he said. "Only if you want." Silly nodded shyly, and the teacher led her into a bright room with drawings on the walls and books stacked in the corners. A group of kids turned to look. Silly froze, heart pounding, expecting cruel words or laughter. But one girl stood and walked over, holding out a crayon. "Want to color with me?" she asked. Silly blinked in shock, then slowly took the crayon. "Okay," she whispered, sitting down beside her at the end of the school day. Silly ran out with the flower still in her hand and a new drawing in the other. She jumped into Eli's arms laughing. "I made a friend," she said. "Her name is Lena." Eli hugged her tight. "I knew you would." That evening, they walked by the riverside near Aunt May's garden. Fireflies danced around them, and Silly's eyes sparkled. "In the twilight, is this forever?" she asked. Eli looked at her, his voice soft and steady. "As long as you want it to be," he said. Silly sat on the grass, pulled out her sketchbook, and drew a picture of a little girl holding hands with a tall man. Behind them was a big tree, stars above, and a heart in the sky. She showed it to Eli. "This is us," she said. Eli looked at it for a long time, then pointed to the heart. "What's that for?" he asked. "It means I belong," she said. "I finally do." And as the stars blinked overhead, Silly leaned against Eli, no longer the cursed child, no longer the one left in the dust. She was someone now, someone loved, someone seen, someone free. The sun rose gently over the hills, spreading golden light across Aunt May's garden. Birds chirped from the trees, and a soft breeze made the yellow flowers sway inside the small house. Silly stood in front of a mirror, wearing a new blue dress. Her green eyes were wide with surprise, her hands smoothing the fabric carefully. Eli stood by the door, watching her with a smile. "You look ready," he said. Silly turned around, nervous but excited. "Are you sure they'll let me stay?" she asked. "They already said yes." Eli replied, Today makes it official. They walked together to the small town hall where a few kind faces waited. There was a woman from the Earth's Adoption Council and 2 local leaders from the village. Silly held Eli's hand tightly, her fingers warm and small. "Do you want to do this?" he whispered. She nodded slowly, more than anything. Inside, the room was quiet. With papers laid out on a polished table, the woman from the council smiled gently and looked at Silly. "We've read your story," she said, "and we know. Your heart, you are no longer a child of the system," she continued. "You are a daughter of someone who chose you." Silly looked at Eli, tears building in her eyes. He gave her a soft nod, placing his hand over hers. "You're not alone," he whispered. "You never have to be alone again." The woman handed Silly a pen and pointed to a small space on the paper. "Write your name," she said. "The name you want?" Silly thought for a moment, then wrote carefully in neat letters. "Silly Eli." Everyone smiled as the name became real official, legal, and filled with meaning. After the signing, the town held a small celebration in the garden. There were sweetbreads, soft music, and glowing paper lanterns. A few children from the school came to join, including Lena, who gave Silly a hand-drawn card. It read, "You're part of us now." Silly danced slowly near the lanterns, spinning. With laughter and light in her eyes, Aunt May clapped along while Eli watched from a bench. His heart full, he had never planned to become a father, not out here. Not in space, but now he couldn't imagine life any other way. As night came, the stars filled the sky like thousands of tiny promises. Silly sat beside Eli, wrapping her small fingers around his wrist. "Do you remember when we met?" she asked. "I remember every moment," he said. "I thought you were just a traveler," she whispered, "but you were a beginning." Eli smiled and looked up at the stars. "Okay, and you were the reason I turned the ship around," he said. "You were the real destination." Silly rested her head on his arm, her voice soft. "I used to wonder if I'd ever mattered to anyone. And now?" he asked. "Now I don't wonder anymore," she replied, "because someone chose me." A shooting star streaked across the sky, and Silly gasped. "Make a wish," Eli said. She closed her eyes, held her necklace tight, and whispered something only the stars could hear. The next morning, Silly hung her drawing on the wall above her bed. It was the one of her and Eli holding hands under a big tree, with the words, "Abandoned, no more loved forever," written in the sky. Every day after that, she woke up with purpose. She went to school, made friends, helped Aunt May in the garden. She drew stories, read books, and asked endless questions. Eli always had time for her, always answered, always listened. Some days, she still had nightmares of being alone, of voices calling her cursed, but Eli was always there, sitting beside her, holding her hand. "It's just a shadow," he would say. And shadows disappear when the sun rises, and for Silly, the sun always rose, because she was no longer a forgotten child. She was a daughter, a student, a dreamer, and a star among many. Her heart no longer felt heavy. It was full of color, full of life, full of stories waiting to be written. And Eli, the man who had once been just a passing human, became the one she would always call Dad, not because he had to, but because he chose to.